The first time I realized I needed to work on my social skills was in the spring of 2021. The world was opening back up and I decided to take a walk to the grocery store. I remember grabbing my grocery bags and leaving my condo apartment when I saw my neighbor working on our building's landscape. My first instinct was to say hello or hi or even just give the classic head nod, but I froze up. And in that moment, it hit me. All my pre-COVID social skills and instincts were gone. Months upon months of being indoors, making music, playing video games, and ordering food delivery turned me into an onliner. And after despising onliners for years, people who are so chronically online and way too consumed with social media to experience real life, I in fact became one myself. The next time I realized I needed to work on my social skills was shortly after, in the summer of 2021. With the pandemic pretty much over with, I decided to meet up with some high school friends I hadn't seen since we graduated. Now, before we talked about any and everything, being kids in high school without much of an identity. But since we last talked, I became a music producer, and in every conversation, I somehow managed to bring it up. That wouldn't be so bad on its own, but every time the topic sailed its course in the conversation, I found myself stranded, realizing I had nothing else to talk about. And it all finally made sense to me later that year on a FaceTime call with my friend Armo, where we were talking about his first trip to LA. In between all the studio stories and anecdotes, one thing stuck with me. He was able to get in important rooms with important people, and he credited it all to his social skills. He said you can have the craziest loops and beats, but if you can't talk to people, nobody will ever hear them, and that resonated with me. At that moment, I thought to myself that if I have trouble making good conversation, or even greeting my neighbors, creating opportunities for myself in the real world through social interaction would be impossible. From that day, I realized there was a facet to being a music producer that I had neglected from the start, and I made it my mission to improve my social skills. On my journey over the last 2 years towards improving my social skills, 3 things stuck with me. 1, I had to learn to fail in order to succeed. 2, I had to change the way I think. And 3 is to open your damn mouth. Now, as simple as that sounds, opening my mouth and saying what I thought was one of the first ways I managed to improve my soft skills. I was, and still am, an overthinker, always pondering on what I should say, and that's if I even dare say something. The simple answer to all that is just to say what you think. You should certainly use some common sense and your better judgment, because not every thought should be said aloud, but most of the time, simply saying whatever you think is a great starting point. And after a while, I began intentionally developing precise questions and specific thoughts that would be even better conversation starters, but in essence, just speaking up solved a lot for me. That being said, for the most part, I was still very awkward, and speaking to people was something I still dreaded. As I said, I was an onliner. I could be out for hours at a time and only say a few sentences, mostly keeping to myself and the music in my AirPods. But I knew this had to change. And to change my habits, I had to change the way I think. I had to stop viewing my flaws as a fixed reality and obstacles as insurmountable, and start viewing things from the perspective of the future version of myself. What would he do? For starters, he probably wouldn't have his earbuds in. That's a universal sign for I don't want to talk to anyone right now. He probably would smile more too, have better posture, and be way more confident. Once I started thinking about things in this way and evolving into the future version of myself, things really started falling in place and I started to see some real progress. Every once in a while though, I stumbled, and I still stumble to this day in every aspect of life. But as cliche and tired as it sounds, it's not how you fall, it's really how you get back up. And failing for me is something that I've somewhat fallen in love with. The idea that even though it might be frustrating at first, once I fail, I'll be able to fail easier and easier until I finally succeed sounds like a win in my books. Learning how to fail and becoming comfortable with not getting it right the first time is essential to learning any skill, this one included. It's becoming clear now more than ever that the most successful people are not only those with the hard skills, such as making the best music, making the best clothing, or making the best art, but those with the soft skills as well, such as making good conversation, making a good first impression, and making people leave a discussion feeling mesmerized, uplifted, and appreciated. And as music producers, or any creator for that matter, we often overlook this fact and solely rely on our work carrying us towards our goals. And even if it does, adding this new dimension to my skill set has only served me well. It's enabled me to meet many talented creatives out of my travels, expand my network, and create a multitude of opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. And I hope that by using the tips that I gave in this video, it can serve you a world of good as well.